Hello, friends. Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming to the first in our series of talks regarding creative confinement, Art Under Quarantine exhibition that is up in our main galleries from, it was from July 1st until January 17th. We're really excited to have both Areca Roe and Piotr Szyhalski here to talk about the series of their work series that they are exhibiting as part of that exhibition. I know we're expecting a few more people to come in, so I'm just gonna talk a little bit briefly regarding the exhibition as a whole, because I know a lot of you have not been able to come and visit it in person. And then I will, and then talk about kind of like how this exhibition came into being as an exhibition. And then we'll hear from Peter and Areca individually to talk about the process that they came to in producing the work. And then we'll have some time for questions at the end. But Peter does have to go straight into another class at 1, so we want to be conscious of time as we are, know he gets to at least not have to transport himself very far to get to class, but
just shift screens.
Yes. So I might just get started. I also want to say that Amy Gerritsen is here representing the Art Center as well. She's our tech support. We also have some attendees that are in person at the Art Center as well, who also get to have a real tour with me after this artist conversation. So I'm going to show some images of the exhibition and talk about that with you right now. And let's see how this goes. And so we had the opportunity to produce and create from scratch an exhibition that dealt directly with what we were experiencing as a community as a whole, which was quarantine, right? That began on March 24th here in Minnesota. And then, but earlier in some other places, we do have an Italian artist that experienced it earlier. And I began looking at what artists were producing and was really impressed. I was impressed because sometimes I felt completely unable to do anything and just sort of crushed by this seemingly impossible situation that you couldn't go anywhere, do anything with children at home and whatnot. So I really looked to artists to help cope with processing the whole situation. And then an opportunity arose that we had an opening right away when we as an art center would reopen. And therefore, we thought, let's pull these artists together and give them an airing and a showing, because we, being in Rochester, outside of a major metropolitan area, knew that we might be able to open a little sooner than some other area art centers and museums. And the artists, when I contacted them, were really excited and really wanted to also get their work out there right in the moment when we were experiencing this. What you'll see in this is, and why, in a way, we chose to select Areca and Peter to talk together. We're having the upcoming Artist Talk series will be with Leslie Barlow will be talking with Coco and Adam, and they'll be talking about their series. And then we have Zoe and Benedetta. I'll be talking in December. So with Peter and Areca, as we'll see with their work, they're both working on a series, and in that format of a series, as are the other artists in this exhibition, as this way, I think, to mark time, because I think time for us was beginning to feel very jumbled, even upside down, but also as a way to take these many emotions, feelings, confusions, anxieties, and push them through a process kind of on this sort of either like a daily process or a way of kind of getting at that thing that was maybe really difficult to process during quarantine. So you'll see that in this, what you'll also see in this exhibition are a lot of screens and windows and some digital ways of us connecting and communicating while physically distanced. So we also are kind of looking for these motifs. And what we'll see when we look at Areca and Peter's work is also this development of motifs that kind of continually arise. And we also saw that in the way that we were producing this exhibition. So with this, just to take you briefly through my, okay, I'm gonna try and move this thing. There we go, there we go. So I can get to my arrows. I'm just gonna just literally walk you through the exhibition as if you were here with us. Because ideally, right, we were gonna have this in person, but we wanna be safe and cognizant of everybody's needs for safety. So it really opens with Leslie Barlow's portraits during a pandemic, in which she has made these paintings, oil on paper, that are the size of her laptop screen. I'm going to go back now. And she is showing us these sort of somewhat, I would say, loving portraits of her close sort of friends and colleagues. And the way, if we can zoom in a little bit, you'll see, and what I noticed right away is the way that the gaze of the sitter and the person that she's communicating with is a little off center, and it's not directly looking at the viewer. And there's something quite melancholic about it that I found really, that I really responded to. But also she has this sort of blue haze that covers everything in each of the paintings that reflects the blue screen of the laptop or the phone. So we'll see a number of portraits that are being also utilized in this exhibition. Next project is by Coco, Laney, and Adam Ramsby. They are working out of London and Alabama. They're an artist duo, and they're working to get to know their neighbors in a project called Whole House Held. I'm going to come back to these in a second. Or hold on. I want to maybe just scroll down so we can get close up of this project. So Whole House Held is working with neighbors and people that the artist did not know. So we have 6 of the portraits are from London and 6 are from Alabama. People are living alone or they're living with family, and they ask each household to create on one sheet of paper what has brought them comfort during this time. And so we have the originals, and some of them are, you know, quite silly, but some are poignant. One of my favorites is I'm losing the will to bake mug cake. So there's a recipe, so a lot of baking and gardening and the things like that that are showing the ways that people are coping. And the images themselves, we see the reflection of the windows typically, or kind of looking through the opened window. So in that process, then that kind of takes us down to Peter's work as we kind of look through the work of Coco and Adam. So Piotr Szyhalski's labor camp report, COVID-19 report, labor camp issue is a series of 80 prints. They are 24 by 36, printed onto newsprint. Peter will be able to show more kind of details about the process of making them, but in our decision it was to have them on newsprint, as if they were in that actual tactile quality of a newspaper or something that's temporal and urgent and of the moment, but also kind of talking about these sort of the Marxism or the communist socialist propaganda aesthetic that Peter is working with here. And then we decided to just repaste them right directly onto the wall of the art center. So you can kind of see there in this image that there's even some wrinkles in it as we pasted them up there. So with this, it reads a little bit like a book. From on the top left corner here is the first day of this. It's March 24th. And then it reads left to right, top to bottom. And then what we will see, if I have a good image, and then here it is at the end. In the end, we decided we would leave a blank one to indicate that it is ongoing, and it is still ongoing, and Peter can share more about where he is at now, but this is the first 80. There are, I believe well over 100 that he's working with. I am amazed. I have to say, I know a little bit about the process of how Peter started this, but I will let him talk about that. But again, when we're looking at how it fits in the theme of the exhibition, is that there's a lot happening in our world and it's overwhelming. And this is one way to process that, is to just sit there every day, which is what he has done. It takes him about 4 hours to sit and produce one of these. These are hand drawn with pen and ink. I want to just pull out, I was doing an interview for TV a couple of days ago, and I was in front of these 4 that are here. And it was just after Trump had gone out onto the balcony and whisked off his mask and said he's immune and he's a superhero. And then I see these 4 and I thought, wow, there is no immunity, which of course that is the claiming immunity, and then this stamping upon the mask. And so, it just, they're continually relevant, I find, even going back and visiting these. So we look forward to hearing more from Peter about that. And then in this sort of couching within this sort of black and white darkness, we have these images from Areca Roe. And I remember the first time I saw this image, I just burst out laughing. I could so relate. I love, and also with Peter, there's quite a bit of humor. Maybe Peter's is a little darker, but as we'll see with Areca, as she shows us the ongoing project of especially this work that we're looking at, there is definitely some darkness in there, in Areca's humor. But it's sort of, this series is really thinking about kind of taking an idea, decorating the home. We're spending a lot of time in the home, but just taking it a little too far. Like what happens in that process? So we have both the sort of what's happening in the world with Peter's work and how we're sort of internally trying to process it. And with Areca, it's more of like, how are we coping in quarantine by being in the home, and being in the home for long stretches of time, often with little people. And what are the things we do to entertain ourselves and to make ourselves creative and whatnot. And again, maybe this is also slightly taking it too far, where you're like, oh, let's dress up in the same color clothes. But then it just keeps going, like, what other clothes colors do we have? And we have a lot of visitors with families and children, and we really wanted to be able to communicate that level of processing to children as well. And this is a big favorite when people come through the museum. So now I'm going to turn it over so that we can get a more in-depth reading and perception into their works from the artists. So I'm gonna stop sharing and allow Peter to come in and share a little bit about his work.
So I'm going first?
Yeah.
All right. Well, first of all, while I'm doing this, Sheila, thank you for hosting the work. It's let's see, slideshow. I remember telling you this in the beginning of our conversations about that the RAC is the first place that actually presented the project in any capacity, right? It happened to be a physical presentation in the gallery, but the fact remains that this really is the first place that the project was shown. So I'm excited about that, and I definitely appreciate the fact that it was possible and that it was installed so beautifully. I really think it looks great in the gallery. I'm very happy with that presentation. In a way, it set a tone for any other subsequent presentation. The fact that you guys wheat pasted the posters in the gallery is fantastic. This is absolutely how I would like the project to exist. It becomes more of an installation space. And for me to be able to show those pictures to any other space is a great card to have in my hand. So there's no excuses about why it couldn't be wheat pasted in the gallery space. It's been done now. All right, so short presentation. I guess I will just say that if you guys, it's a relatively small group, so I would entertain any questions you might want to ask while I'm talking about stuff, just so that we can kind of get to the conversation part of the project as well. So feel free to cut in at any moment. And I just wanted to show very quickly 3 projects to talk about kind of a lead-in to the COVID reports. And these just happen to be the most recent projects right before this. And I guess maybe a little bit in retrospect, I'm seeing some kind of relationship between the series, such as it is right now. So the You Work, You Eat plates were a series of these hand-painted plates. I buy the vintage plates or used plates in like ARC or secondhand stores, and just add that phrase to the existing designs. And part of the kind of joy of this project for me was to kind of figure out how to aesthetically work myself into an existing design. But the kind of variety of the typographic treatments that happened in this series, and the fact that I basically spend a good amount of time painting with a brush letter forms, definitely feels like kind of a meaningful precursor to the COVID series. That is, the whole thing is done with the brush as well. So this idea of negotiating letter forms with the brush was definitely part of this project, and it turned out to be a good practice, I think, for the project that I'm working still on. The other project I want to bring up is Them. It's this massive banner printer project that I did for the first time in 2015 in the Soap Factory exhibition. So in order to print these really large sheets, these are 42 feet long, 12 feet tall pieces, I ended up kind of constructing this contraption that you see in the middle of the gallery there that facilitates the printing process. I cut these letter forms out of industrial insulation material, and each one of those letters is printed independently on these strips of material that is then sewn together to create these large surfaces. The project was initially conceived as a response to the Occupy Wall Street movement, and so the text I kind of wrote for myself in a somewhat angry fashion, not thinking that they would become an artwork at any point in the future. But when the Soap Factory exhibition presented itself as an opportunity, I thought this would be one of the pieces in the show. And subsequently, I ended up presenting this very project in several different spaces. So you're looking at different kind of format presentations. Now the printer itself is mobile, shippable. It moves from space to space. And when I do present the work, I print the entire set of these texts. They're just really kind of raw statements that you see on the left of the screen right now. I print the whole thing one letter at a time. When I'm done, we cut it off and we take it outside as a kind of an event. I call them walkabouts. And this is part of the part of the project that I like to point out as a kind of a meaningful, formal property of it, which is that it looks, to me anyway, as half a protest banner and a half news sticker, the kind of text that scrolls slowly at the bottom of the screen when you're watching the news. This is a good distant view, so you can see the scale of this. The banners, when the project is completed, is sort of long enough to wrap around the city block. And that idea of the distance between absorbing a news item and then it becoming a material for protest is definitely something that informed the COVID series, which kind of compresses that amount of time even further. So basically, the distance for me from reading an item, reading about something that just transpired in the world or in our country, and then responding to it immediately and then putting it back into the social media spheres became kind of a cycle that defined that project for me. But before I get to this, so the second half of the DEM project is the fact that the banner printer also exists as a kind of utility, a sort of a service, I want to say, to the communities, the various communities that had reached out to me with requests for banner printing. This started day after the opening of the Soap Factory show, because it was the day after the killing of Jamar Clark, and the protests were being organized. I posted on Facebook, said, you know, I have the printer, I can print whatever you want, just tell me the text and then we'll start printing. You can then come and pick them up at the gallery and bring them back out to the street. So these are a couple of pictures of the pieces that we started printing in the gallery on that, I think it was a Sunday. And then slowly those images started to populate the social media, and so the loop kind of closed. And I've been printing these banners ever since. I honestly don't know how many hundreds, maybe thousands of individual impressions I have made. But the banners had been, at least this version of the project, the banners that are just printed by me as a kind of service, had been utilized in cities all around the country. So there's something really amazing about the moment of audience sort of taking ownership of the project that I observed that happened with the banner piece, that happened with other projects in my past, and now I'm really trying to focus on that moment where the audience sort of takes ownership of the work. And I feel something similar had happened with the COVID report series. I did start it. So as you can see, I'm literally in the same space. I'm working on today's report, but because of our talk, I was unable to finish it. I'm sort of in the middle of it. And I made a drawing that seemed sort of crazy or strange. I had a dream of this image of a severed head with some kind of plants growing out of its eyes. And I made that drawing basically to do something with myself in the early days of the quarantine. And I posted it online, and the kind of response that happened to that first drawing was the thing that really prompted me to think maybe I should do another one, which is, you know, the second one that happened then. And I had 7 sheets of paper at home. And so I thought maybe I should do all first 7 and see where we land. And by the time I was done with that 7th drawing, there were people online who said, I will buy you more paper so that you keep going, right? And there was a moment for me to sort of realize that maybe it was already happening. Maybe the project was already being kind of owned by the audience online. And the further I ended up working with the project, the more of that was happening, to the point where I, at this point, really do feel like I am sort of running a kind of I'm maintaining this this thing that just happens, that became a sort of a service, if you will. People tell me this almost every day. They count on this. They're looking forward to it. They're expecting this to happen. I'm not sure how to even conceive of ending of the project. I mean, I have some thoughts and hopes. I always say I keep looking for a sign for it to end, but I haven't quite encountered it yet. So Sheila said I'm past 100. I definitely am past 200 drawings at this point. And it has been more than half a year. I certainly don't feel it, but it's sort of astounding to me that it's been a half a year plus process of this daily ritual. 4 hours is a really quick one. There are some that I do in 4 hours. There are some that take 8 or 9 hours. I've done some calculations, and I've spent more than 1,000 hours on this one project, sitting here in this desk every day. That alone does something strange to one's perception and sense of time, on top of everything else that was happening with the quarantine. So it is definitely a very unusual project. And how are we doing on time? Should I be wrapping this up? Sheila?
Okay, I'm still enraptured. I haven't even been keeping track of
Well,
the time myself. How are we doing for time? Yeah, probably wrap it up in like 2 minutes.
So I'm just going to cruise very quickly through this. There's a section that I called Encounters that just talks about different ways of presenting, obviously, RAC with the inside of the gallery. The project was also presented a wheat pasted on the outside of the museum in St. Paul, which I really like because of the skin of the art institution and the public space. So this in between, if you will. And then it was also presented in Baltimore as straight up street poster presentation. So it sort of traveled the whole way from this virtual public space all the way to the kind of place where the poster as a format belongs. And there's all these themes that now exist as through lines through the projects: the homes, the hands with the dollar cuffs that are the hands of the regime, phones everywhere. So much of our experience of the pandemic happened through the phones. Coffins or caskets, kind of archetypal image that I continue working with, because our experience of death is so profoundly present through these last few months. Fire, that was initially just a metaphorical presentation of the pandemic, but soon became the literal fire of the uprisings in Minneapolis and spreading around the country and the world. There are these genres of crazy snake oil advertising, imaginary illustrations for the documents that the regime has been releasing. This series that's within the series of white old men orgies fueled by booze and money. And then there's the issues that were kind of adjacent to the pandemic, the economic inequities and just the money as the motivating factor for so much of this disaster, but also acknowledging nature and the natural world and the environment in relation, or as a kind of a antidote or backdrop or context for the pandemic. Police brutality, obviously. And then there's these propaganda themes. And I want to say, Sheila, yes, there is obviously an aesthetic that is informed by the Soviet propaganda, but I make a very kind of concerted effort to talk about propaganda as an international phenomenon. And so a lot of these images are informed just as well by American propaganda, by German propaganda, Chinese propaganda, if you will. It's not a language that is reserved for to communists or communist regimes. So the pointing finger is very familiar to the American audience. So is the hush image, et cetera, et cetera. And then there's these themes that sort of emerge from image to image, like this, from the essential work to the attempt at suppression of the vote, to the encouragement to vote. And I do end my presentation with this short video just asking people to vote, and to vote in a way for me, because I can't vote in this country. I'm a legal alien. I hold the green card for 30 years now, pay taxes and function as a regular citizen, except for the fact that I can't vote. So, all right, I'm gonna stop sharing here. Oh no, actually one more thing I'll say, that is obviously the work still continues. And so if you really wanted to see more of it, it's happening mainly on Instagram and Facebook. And with that, I will close.
Thank you, Peter.
Mm-hmm.
That was really enlightening.
I'm looking forward to
Perspective on it.
question and answer.
Yeah, I think we'll hear from Areca and then be able to kind of open it up to questions about both of your works. Okay, thank you.
All right, I'll go ahead and share my screen here. Thank you for having my work at Rochester Art Center. It's really exciting to have work there, and thank you, Peter, for all the work you do. I am one of those people that definitely looks forward to seeing the COVID reports, and I just feel like they are so poignant and they really encapsulate a lot of the feelings that are hard to kind of process. So like Sheila was saying, they help me kind of process the time and process the events that just like keep coming at you every day. So yeah, I'll talk about the two projects that that I have that Sheila showed. This one, and then I'll talk about the other one and how that one is progressing. So this project is much more like kind of light and fun, which, you know, is maybe an antidote to some of the heavier work. This project we did in late April, and it was about 6 weeks into staying at home with you know, just my immediate family and my kids pretty much all the time. So like no childcare, no outlets like YMCA's or museums or anything like that. So it was very intense time, and kind of a scary time as well. And I was looking at Instagram a lot as a way to kind of connect with the world and see what other people were up to, because that was one of the only ways to do it. And I saw a friend of mine from my former choir, Fiona, had posted, she was doing a creative challenge where she was for 100 days doing a creative project. And she, which I think is very awesome and ambitious, and I liked watching her process, but I was like, I don't know if I can do that every day. Like Peter was saying, it takes like 4 hours to do, like, you know, minimum to make like something that you like. So I saw that she had done a COVID color challenge, kind of like a rainbow outfit challenge. She's very stylish. And I thought it was really cool, and I showed it to my children, and they thought it was cool too. And a little while later, we had a kind of a rainy day, and I was like, hey, you guys want to do that color challenge? We can all dress up in these different colors. And my daughter's very into rainbows. She draws rainbows all the time. My son's into rainbows too, but she, you know, she draws them and loves them. And I did the same thing when I was her age. So we decided to do it. And we started with red. So I'll just kind of go through some of these and talk about the process. We started with red because that's the first color. And the kids chose their own clothes and their own props. And we set up my camera on a tripod, and my husband, kudos goes to my husband Carl, because he was shooting a lot of the images for us. He's in one of the images, but he doesn't have a very colorful wardrobe, so he couldn't be in some of the images. So we did it all in one day. We did all of the rainbow colors in one day, which was kind of intense, and you can see the process throughout. I feel like you can kind of see the kids getting like from going from calm to like a little bit more wild and tired. And the kids had very definite ideas about what they wanted to do. So that was kind of fun to have, you know, them choose their objects and choose what they were doing. Like my daughter wanted to wear this raincoat, which was very yellow. And she was like, let's pretend like we're talking to each other. So that's what we did. And I didn't really plan on this project being like art with a capital A on a art wall. I'm happy that it ended up like that, but it was really just kind of like a fun thing, a way to like process time in a way, process it through play, which I think is maybe why it's struck a chord a little bit. People also wanting sort of an outlet, a way to play. So you can see my husband's in this one. He had some blue clothes. This one, we ended up reshooting it a couple weeks later because tired at that point and getting a little cranky. And then we had this lilac bush that has these beautiful purple blooms. So that is the one that we did end up reshooting. And then we did black because my son wanted to do that. And then I wanted to do teal because that's my favorite color. You can see my daughter, this is the last one we did during the day. And you can see my daughter's getting a little crazy. I'm trying to calm her down. And so she's just starting to lose it. So yeah, it was my aim with this was just to have fun and have a project that we could work on together. And I hope that other people will you know, do this too if they find it interesting. It is kind of like a trend on Instagram. I'd only seen Fiona's, I hadn't seen these, but you know, subsequently I was looking at like COVID Color Challenge, so there's some really fun ones. So I definitely would encourage anybody who wants to do it to give it a try. It is a fun challenge, especially if you're interested in color. Yeah, so that's the rainbow fashion shoot is what I call it. And that led to this project in certain ways. I found that it was really great to have that creative project and have that creative outlet. And I felt like, you know, during the pandemic, I needed to have something at home I could work on. I planned to do some traveling and shoot photo and video out in the world. Of course, that didn't happen, so I had to pivot. And I'm, you know, as many artists are, I'm happiest when I'm kind of like working on a problem, a creative problem, and trying to figure out what I'm going to do next and making work. So this project was inspired partly by the sort of overwhelming domesticity, as Sheila alluded to, sort of like being at home all the time, surrounded by all of these domestic objects. And I collect these nature-inspired fabrics, so it made sense for me to kind of incorporate those. And it's also inspired by stock photography. I'd been interested in stock photography for a little while. I got an email invite to join Getty, which is like a big stock company. And so a couple years ago, I uploaded images to that just to try it out, and nothing really came of it. And more recently, I was looking into it because I was thinking maybe my students could make some money, you know, my photography students, maybe they could use this as an outlet. And this is Shutterstock. It's one of the biggest stock websites, and I did a search for women laughing with salad because that was a funny sort of meme or a Tumblr a few years ago where people were posting images, stock images of women laughing with salad. It's kind of absurd, kind of weird and generic, and so that was what also drew me to the stock images. There's a little bit of that absurdity and the sort of genericness, and what I found when I was researching it is that it is kind of a scam in a way. Like, these companies make a lot of money, but the photographers make very little money. The Shutterstock, when I was researching it, it seemed like if you sold an image, you might get $2 if you were lucky, and a lot of times it was 25 cents. And for the amount of like time and knowledge and equipment and paying models and editing for that amount of time, it seemed like a ridiculous amount of money. So this is Getty. Yeah, and it also seemed kind of ripe for, I don't know, making fun of in a way. So I started looking at the prompts. They send out these prompts for photographers to respond to, like what is going to be searched for, what is going to be hot the next month, what should photographers be photographing. And especially when the pandemic started, I started seeing more and more references to the pandemic because advertisers, bloggers, news sites want to use these stock photo images, and stock photos are ubiquitous. They are, you'll see them anywhere, all over online, advertisements, etc. So the prompts I thought were really interesting, and so with this project, I started taking those prompts and responding to them photographically in ways that they probably weren't meant to be. So no place like home customers will be searching for images of rooms that stand out from the norm or are uniquely customized. So taking that a little too far is kind of a theme that I ended up doing. I decided to try to make it a weekly practice. I knew I couldn't do a daily practice, you know, at this time with the kids at home 24/7, no childcare, and I was trying to teach online as well. So it was, a weekly practice seemed more manageable to me. So I'll show some of the prompts and then responses. Working remotely, balance is important when working from home, and visuals of that balance, working among children or playing with pets, will be popular. So, whoops, this was my response to working from home. Again, I decided to incorporate my kids because we're around each other all the time. They weren't in school, and they like doing it. They kind of enjoy it. So, you know, I had these stripy outfits put together. I love stripes. So I thought that would kind of emphasize the sort of intertwining of our limbs and of ourselves. And I also was thinking about how there kind of is no balance for some of us. There isn't really a separation. It's hard to achieve that. Smiling behind the mask. So again, like a little bit absurd, a little bit, some stock photos seem a little bit like cloying or too happy. So with masks and face coverings now a part of daily life, customers are asking to see images where the model is clearly smiling under the mask. So playing around in the studio, I have like a basement studio and sort of makeshift. And it's been really fun to just play around, and I arrived at this and I was like, this is creepy. So a lot of times if something made me laugh or made me kind of like feel like it was strange, that's the direction I went. So I also did this one, which made me laugh as a response to the smiling behind the mask. It seems slightly less absurd now because I'm seeing people wear their masks and they sometimes will wear them in a completely wrong way. And this doesn't seem so absurd anymore. Food photography will be popular, especially trendy dishes like vegan meals, avocado smash. So, you know, I latched onto that term, avocado smash. Sometimes I was trying to take these too literally, take them too far. I ended up doing a video for this one. So a lot of it's photographic. I have done some video responses too. So I think I'll just show a brief bit of that. There is sound, but it's not really important. So I don't know if you can hear.
I think too, like the surgical glove hand, Areca, right? That's another kind of symbol we're seeing a lot, like
Yes.
like as well as the mask, this sort of.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, so that's definitely like a motif and kind of like is a reference to the pandemic and the COVID times. So yeah, that definitely came up several times in addition to the masks. And so the prompts, I also felt like the prompts kind of encapsulated what we're going through right now. It was interesting to view the prompts prior to the pandemic and post. And I'm continuing to do this series. But a lot of it was kind of like people are wanting to see what's happening right now in the pandemic. So those were the prompts. So that was in a way marking that time, marking the changes that were happening. So like home haircuts in the beginning, nobody could go to get haircuts. That's a little bit opened up now. So my response was, again, to incorporate my kids. That's my son cutting the hair. They're really good models too. They're on board, they're little actors. Our changing environment, Earth Day may be over, but interest in the planet is still strong. Powerful visuals of natural disasters like earthquakes, hurricanes, thunderstorms, and tornadoes will be searched for often. So again, collaborating with the kids was kind of exciting on this. We created this tornado scene out of a blanket, and then I had these houses left over from a different project I did, and the kids were kind of deciding what to do with them. Like my daughter had decided it would be cool to just like place them on her, which I thought was, you know, a brilliant idea. So this was her idea. So this was an example of a prompt that was prior to the pandemic. I think this prompt came out in January or February. And it seems in retrospect kind of sad and overly optimistic. The roaring 2020s. Art Deco set the tone for the 1920s with its visual language of ornate geometric shapes and decor. Images or illustrations reflecting that style will be popular all year. Gold was a huge presence in the 1920s, and 2020s proving to be a throwback. So, you know, I took the 1920s sort of like style and put the 2020s twist on it with the gloves and the mask again. Yeah, in retrospect, seems a little optimistic. Non-perishable, loading up on non-perishable food items has become essential. So it seems like so long ago, but at the beginning of the pandemic, it was hard to get pasta or beans or anything like that. So I was playing with that idea. And then I came upon this image of Ivanka Trump a couple months later, and I was like, hey, she stole that idea from me. She's probably getting inspiration from my Instagram, I'm sure. Self-care is the best care. So again, kind of making fun of that idea of like using masks and journaling and these kind of like feminine geared self-care routines, which are great, but it seems a little bit overplayed. And I was actually thinking about at this time fires in the Amazon and in Australia, but then of course as Peter was saying, there's the fires from riots and also the fires out west. So this came out kind of coinciding with the fires out west, which was very frightening for a lot of friends and family of mine. I'll just show a couple more here. I think
yeah, Areca, it's actually 10 minutes. We have 10 minutes left.
Oh yeah.
So we might have to switch to some questions and answers right now, but yeah. I love your series. It's so great. Interesting that you have that fire motif like Peter does too.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you want to see more, I'm posting them on Instagram.
Awesome. Yes, Callie shared that in the chat for everyone.
Awesome.
If you want to go in and see that. So I'd like to open this up to our attendees here on Zoom. So if you want to put on your camera, put on your microphone, you can ask a question to Peter and Areca, or you can type it in the chat if that seems more your style, and we can answer that way. So I'm gonna open it up to you guys now.
Can I start?
Always, Chris. Yes, please.
Peter, I was interested when you said about the plates that you were aesthetically inserting yourself into a pre-existing design. Mm-hmm. And that seemed to happen again with the banners, that you create something that once it moves out into the world, then, you know, the fact that it could wrap around a block, it becomes incorporated into this design. Mm. Where does that impulse come from, and how do you think about that and satisfying that?
Yeah, I guess I didn't really think about it in that. I wouldn't have thought of the plates the same way I'm thinking about the banners. But now that you said this, maybe there is a point to be made there about maybe focus or desire for the work to really connect with more of the social spaces or spaces in everyday life, rather than thinking about the, you know, kind of a white cube of the gallery or art institution, right? So both, I think the plates and the banners have an underpinning of that. And I think it has been a kind of a theme or something that intentionally or not I've been pursuing basically my entire life, like looking for alternative ways of engaging with the audience. And the Covet series, I think, does that too. I mean, you know, honestly, if we had a conversation a year ago or a couple of years ago, and you would say, oh, you're gonna make a art project, you're gonna work on an art project for half a year, the center of which will be you sharing those pictures on social media, I would literally laugh, because I'd say this is completely preposterous. But in the circumstances of this year, this is literally what made sense and what had to happen for me. And so that finding of a way to exist in that social or shared space is probably the one way I would answer that question.
Thanks, Chris, for that question. Anyone else?
Hi, yeah, I have a question for Peter.
Hey.
Hey, Peter. I mean, I'm just curious, with all the immense effort that's gone into these COVID drawings, how do you balance that with your job as a teacher? Is it not like you have 2 jobs now? Yes,
I do have 2 jobs now. It definitely became a full-time job. My daughter tends to remind me that it's a full-time job because, well, but to answer the question specifically, how, I am not sure. Desperately, or, I mean, in literal terms, I in the summer, knowing that the school was coming up, I started getting up at 5:30 in the morning and kind of getting my body used to that rhythm. And that's what I'm doing these days, to make sure that I have substantial amount of time in the morning to perhaps finish or perhaps make a good headway on the drawing before my class starts at 1. And then, you know, so that's like a logistical situation. But, you know, the project became what it was because first it was the lockdowns, then it was the summer. So for a few months, I really didn't have to think about anything else except this. So it really took over the substantial chunks of my life, and it keeps holding. So
I hope you can continue to do it for years to come.
Oh God, no. No, I would
Maybe
die.
not. Maybe, I hope not. Thank you, Peter.
Yeah, thank you.
Can I just ask a question to Piotr as well, just on the ideas that you have each day? You know, it sort of seems so perfect for the day. Do you sort of start out and start one idea and then move on to another idea, or do you just get up and think, oh, that's what it's going to be, and have it sort of in your mind already?
It's really strange. I don't know. There isn't really one way to answer this. I will say that so most of the time it really is the situation that in the morning the cycle begins fresh. I spend maybe an hour and a half reading news and, you know, whatever sources, and then I'm down to the basement and try to process whatever I just read, and that becomes the drawing, right? And I share the process on Instagram, so some details of it are out in the open. It really is, there are a number of strategies at work in a way that I'm trying to kind of resolve whatever I'm thinking or feeling in the moment. But then there are also situations where I think of something on the night before, you know, the next day happens, and that sort of stays with me through the night, and in the morning maybe makes more sense. There are also like there's a number of pieces that those are just sketches for drawings that never became drawings, and I don't discard them because sadly a lot of these ideas are present with us for more than a day. And so sometimes when things are difficult in the morning, I would look back at these things. There's also a different stack of these little cards. Most of these are just words. So this is the top one that has the word throwback. It's something Areca said, and I thought, oh, this is an interesting word because so much of what we're experiencing right now is a kind of perverse throwback to backward thinking and you know, kind of, I don't have to elaborate on that. Anyway, it's a word that I didn't think of, but now resonates with me, and it's just added to this stack of other terms that I honestly sometimes lay out in front of me and kind of work with whatever is in my head in terms of images, language of the day, It's I don't know. I mean, I've done it now for half a year, so there is a weird rhythm to this, and there's also a lot of anxiety, and I'll be honest about that. When I go to sleep and I have no idea what I'm going to do the next day, it's an anxious time, and somehow every day there's just something that resonates profoundly enough that I feel like it needs to be said.
Yeah, and then I think that resonates with us then, your viewers, right?
Well, you know, one hopes.
Yeah. Well, I know you have to get going.
No, so you guys can talk to Areca.
I think we can field some questions for Areca. If people can stay a little longer. So thank you very much, Peter, for sharing your process.
Thanks, Areca. I mean, thanks, Sheila, for having me, and Areca, thanks for being a partner in this conversation. Love seeing you. Love seeing everybody. I wish we had more time, but I really have to go.
I made a little shout out. You were placed on the top 5 COVID artworks to follow by the New York Times.
All right. Yes. So
I just want everybody to know that. And secondly, that we are hopefully going to get books that are a coffee table book of all of the prints of this into the Art Center bookshops. So
we're working on it.
Yeah, so we're hoping to get that available for us before it closes on January 17th. So please come visit sometime, Peter, when you're feeling up to it.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Peter.
Thanks.
Yeah, I'm happy to stay a few more minutes and entertain any questions if anybody has any.
Thank you, Areca. I appreciate that.
I have a question, Areca.
Hi, Pete.
It's Pete from Minneapolis. I'm just wondering about the uncertainty of the duration of the projects that you're working on, both with or without the prompts and some of the motifs. I'm wondering how long it's going to keep on going as the uncertainty of COVID continues, as well as perhaps as the kids, now they're perhaps in school or not in school, I'm not sure with your kids. I know that I have a 16-year-old who's in and out of a hybrid school system right now. It changes everything. And, or is this gonna be some perhaps the type of photography assignments we give ourselves that, you know, maybe like Francesca Woodman, the personal photographs, which are now kind of Instagram selfies for a lot of artists. Any thoughts on those things?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I still have ideas, and as long as I still have ideas and inspirations, then I'll keep going, and it may last I feel like it should last as long as the pandemic, in a way, to be kind of like from beginning to end. My kids are in hybrid school as well now, so they are in school some of the time. So, which actually frees me up a little bit more so I can think and work on it on my own. I'm not used to doing a lot of self-portraiture. This is a new thing for me, but it kind of became necessary to use myself as the model because I can't bring a lot of other people into my orbit. Yeah, so I don't know how long it will last, but I feel like it has been, it's been giving me a lot of ideas and a lot of inspiration. So as long as that keeps happening, I'll keep doing it. Yeah, and like I said, I'm trying to do a weekly practice. I haven't totally succeeded in that. I've missed a few weeks, but yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I don't really have a question, but just to say, I don't know, I'm thinking about your phrase, the overwhelming domesticity. And somehow that makes me think of Martha Rosler's Semiotics of the Kitchen and kind of her response to domestic space and domestic objects. So yeah, I don't have a question necessarily like, were you thinking of, is there a connection there maybe? But I don't know, I guess maybe I want to hear you talk more about overwhelming domesticity. I'm sort of interested in that as a concept and your response.
Oh yeah, I hadn't made the connection with Martha Rossler. That's interesting. Yeah, overwhelming domesticity. I feel like probably everyone's in that boat, or maybe not quite so much anymore. I feel like, you know, people are going out a little bit more, but yeah, being at home all the time with just your immediate family was overwhelming, I think, for a lot of people. You know, if you had told me that I was going to have like zero childcare for like months and months on end, I would have like lost my mind. But it turns out it isn't so bad. Like we figured out a rhythm, and it's no longer so overwhelming. But yeah, I mean, our house is a total disaster most of the time. You know, there's like books all over my room that you guys can't see. The kids like decided to make like book piles on the floor. So it becomes overwhelming. And like, I feel like it's just like this constant race to like keep it clean, which just doesn't really happen. So that part is definitely overwhelming. Yeah, and I think that probably a lot of people and parents of young kids can relate. It's just nonstop, you know. But thanks for your comment. I'll take a look at the kitchen, Semiotics of the Kitchen. I don't know if I've seen her work in that series.
I think I'm partly interested because I think her response in a way was, it's humorous and absurd because she's taking kitchen utensils and, you know, using them in gestures that are exaggerated, similar to the way, you know, like she's got a knife and so she's cutting, and she's got a rolling pin and she's rolling. So she's doing that, and it's funny, but it's also very aggressive. And your response to the overwhelming domesticity, you know, struggling with the balance and like the literal holding children and almost looking like you're falling over, comes across in yeah, even the way you're talking about it, like you've adapted, and it's sort of fun, and it's okay, and it's preferable maybe in some ways to life before. So I think that's kind of where I was interested. Like your response is a very playful one.
Yeah, I feel like I have to keep it like funny and playful to stay sane in a way. Yeah, and I feel like it becomes more fun for me if it's a little bit absurd and silly. Yeah.
And I think there's like definitely a satire in it, Areca, too, of just like, here we are in this moment. And then you have, especially it felt like when you did the quote about the natural disasters of like tornadoes and da-da-da, like as if like somehow you got to capitalize on these horrible things that are happening, or like our need for face masks and being safe because there's a pandemic, and just like how, you know, that I think that satire is working really well in this, and that's what I feel like it's so everyday in what we're seeing, because we're seeing the ads of people with masks and they're smiling under their masks, and we're seeing those things in our own world right now. But it's nice to then go, or when not nice, but when I see your work in the series, I think, that is a little weird, you know, like where are we? What am I experiencing in my world? You know,
Yeah.
that I really like about it.
Yeah, it becomes kind of normalized. We're, you know, inured to a lot of it now, and yeah, maybe like stepping back and looking at a different view. And I feel like Peter's work does that too, to a greater extent in some ways. But I feel like the absurdity also just comes from the stock prompts, like they're kind of absurd.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Any more questions for Areca?
Thanks so much for having me.
No questions. I just wanted to say your work is very interesting. I think all of us need really great inspirations for how to be creative in this environment. And thank you for sharing. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
I had a question real fast. Was there, what thoughts do you have on sharing your art, like in this time that we are in now? Like, because even some people may be reluctant to go to a studio, a gallery, a museum. So did that play into your creative like aspirations during this series?
Prior to this series, I always would like work on something for a while and like kind of perfect it and then show it in a gallery and then share it on social media. But for this, kind of like Peter was saying, I started sharing it on social media like the moment I made it, just because it was like talking about the immediacy. So I feel like that was like my end product in mind was to share it on social media. And you know, I have had it shown in Rochester Art Center and a couple other galleries, but I feel like galleries are being really safe, and that doesn't really concern me as far as like putting it up in the world. It seems like it's being done in a really responsible way. So, you know, I'm very happy that it's shown in galleries, but I guess like the Instagram sort of world was where I was thinking of it ending up in a way. Anything else? Great questions. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Areca, for spending a little extra time with us today. And really appreciate your work, and grateful you let us have it here at the Art Center. Please come visit when you have a chance, everyone, and you feel safe, and you can do that. We'd love to see you here. And stay tuned for our other talks. We have one in November 12th and then December 6th, I believe, but don't quote me on that. I forgot to look at my dates. But anyways, it will be amazing to hear from the other artists as part of this series and see how, again, they're currently coping with our daily, you know, COVID number rates and whatever we have going on out there. So I hope everyone stays safe, stays strong out there. And thank you for attending. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Sheila.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Areca.
Bye.
Thanks.